Hi, I'm Rhiannon Faith, and I'm here to tell you a story. So, a colleague of mine and friend sent me a photo this morning of an epic crash on a mountain bike that he incurred, resulting in pretty banged up face, and proposed to me a fantastical story of fleeing from a mountain lion, then wrestling said mountain lion only to end up with the resulting injuries, and asked if that would be a plausible, believable scenario for his resulting injuries, which reminded me of the hilarity of an injury requiring, in fact, some sort of fantastical story. So, my middle daughter, when she was born, had a clubbed foot. Her right foot was clubbed. And so she had to start progressive casting to correct the clubbed foot when she was about 3 weeks old. Unfortunately, it was delayed because of insurance and her being a newborn and not having a social security number. It was shenanigans. I was so annoyed with the doctors and the insurance company not allowing her to start her treatment sooner. In any event, she started right away at 3 weeks. And so she had a week. Each week she got a new cast to progressively reposition the foot. And at the 5th week, she had her Achilles tendon nicked and then a 6th cast placed. And so that one stayed on for 3 weeks. So she had this duration of casting, about 8 weeks long. During that time, she was an absolute pipsqueak of a little person. So she was 6 pounds, 0.3 ounces when she was born. And when we left the hospital, she was about 5 pounds. And so she was itsy bitsy, 18 inches, like just such a peanut. And here she had this full leg cast. And that's not that big of a deal. But at the time, I was a cheer coach for my older daughter and very involved with Girl Scouts and my daughter's school activities, PTA stuff, all of that good, engagement, etc. I was also teaching Sunday school and worked full time and was going to school. There was a lot on my plate. But in all of these different scenarios, I'd encounter various people. And there would be a handful of people who would look with just extraordinary judgment at her having this full leg cast, because she's just this itsy bitsy baby. And to an alarming degree, people did not assume positive intent. They looked at me like I somehow had abused my kid, which was kind of irritating, honestly. Are you serious? So I decided to have fun with it when people would ask me these questions. Again, she's 3 weeks old when this started, and the total was 12 weeks. So she's 11 weeks old when we're done with this experience. She's not that big, okay? She's not even 3 months when she's done. Now, again, being so small when she started, she's really, really small. I don't know if you're familiar with newborns, but they don't move very much at this age. Well, she wasn't moving either. So people would ask me, oh my gosh, what happened? With the pearl clutch alarm and, oh dear, ridiculous. So I got kind of tired of the ridiculous questions and the very judgmental looks, which resulted in me developing fantastical stories in response and delivering them with the most, if I do say so myself, spectacular deadpan delivery. So, a couple of those stories that I would say. So a person approaches me, oh my gosh, what happened? What happened to your baby's leg? So again, I'm a cheer coach, right? So I said, well, she loves cheer. What can I say? She's a cheer baby. She's been going to practices since she was in utero. So she wanted to be at the top of the pyramid. She was up there. She stuck it. And then things kind of fell apart. She ended up at the bottom of the pyramid. Her leg was twisted, so obviously it was broken, and we had to pursue casting. And I didn't crack a smile. I didn't break character remotely. And these moms would stare at me. Oh, are you serious? Obviously, I'm not serious. How ridiculous. Did you ask me a stupid question with an accusatory tone? And another one I really enjoyed. So she's really into justice and crime fighting. And so there was a mugging near her. This guy fled, carjacked, and she went sprinting after that car, grabbed the handle. She didn't nail it. She couldn't get to the guy in time. She fell away, and the wheel, unfortunately, it ran over that leg. And so, thankfully it wasn't crushed because she's a newborn. And so she was able to just get casting. again, with a full deadpan delivery, and I would rattle off these myriad of ridiculous, I mean ridiculous stories. My favorite though was watching a person's mind sort of filter through the possibility. Is that true? Could that be true? Isn't she an infant? Is she younger than I believe her to be? I, I can't I can't tell you how funny it is to watch a grown person navigate the I think she's lying. Like you can see the little cogs turning in their head, trying to process this information and come to a more rational conclusion. And so, most of the time, after a minute or two of somebody not quickly coming to the conclusion that obviously I was pulling their leg, no pun intended, I would say, she had a clubbed foot. She's getting progressive casting. You'll see more of these. And so I had so much fun with it. But it did remind me that, one of my favorite things about having scars is the stories that you could tell with them. Again, not to like meaningfully convince somebody that you got a scar in a more interesting way than you in fact did, but when someone wants to press you for some judgmental question, it is kind of fun to come back with a sarcastic and, throw it back at you kind of response. So I had to get a disc replaced, C6 and 7 in 2021, and between C6 and C7. So they come through the front of your throat. And so I was really excited. I kind of always wanted the thyroid scar, the thyroidectomy scar, because it's right here and it just kind of looks like you got knifed. And I had a lot of fun ideas about what kind of story I would come up with if somebody asked me about that scar. But this scar, it's not very obvious. Although I do really like when my scars are obvious. Again, I feel like I earned them, and I want to like embrace that. So anyways, I was thinking, of some sort of a Matrix-esque story where it was a sword fight and I leaned back, but I didn't lean back far enough and they nicked me, and that's how I ended up with the scar. I've only gotten to deliver that one once. And I have a really fantastic scar on my right shoulder. I had a lipoma. It was the biggest removed in the state of California at the time I had it removed in August of, I think it was 2007. But I was really excited about it because it was the biggest one removed, the biggest tumor. And honestly, if you're going to do something, I feel really strongly, like go big or go home, right? I want there to be something to show for it. Is it miserable that I had to have a tumor removed from my shoulder? Yes. Did I enjoy that experience overall? Not particularly. However, if I'm going to do it, let's make a record of it. Unfortunately, it was August and multiple people broke my record thereafter, but I had the spectacular scar. And the reason I ended up with a spectacular scar as I did, unfortunately, your shoulder is kind of a tough place to maintain a good compression bandage without strangling yourself or crushing your breasts if you're a girl. And so it was difficult to maintain that really tight compression. And if you remove something from your body wants to naturally backfill it, right? And so what's the obvious choice? Fluid. So my tumor space, the vacancy of that, backfilled with fluid. And so I had to go in every day for more than 2 weeks and have the fluid drawn off that had gone there after it had ruptured the initial time. So I had to do a little bit more stitching. The staples had bucked. And so my scar looks pretty remarkable. And that was actually really fun because my surgeon was this very, very small Punjabi man. He was probably 4'10". I mean, if he was 4'10", very prim and very proper. And he had seen the other tattoos that I had, and the one scar is very near to one of my tattoos. And so I had said to him before the surgery, okay, doc, look, I get it. The objective here, of course, is to remove the tumor. But, if you could kind of work around the tattoo, that would be delightful. It would delight me at a high level. So, I mean, get the tumor, obviously, but if we could maintain the tattoo, that would be my preference. And it's not like the most earth-shattering tattoo, but it's kind of a fun, 2 hibiscus flowers and the kind of a nod to, or a hibiscus flower, kind of a nod to my childhood in San Diego, and a bumblebee that was for my older daughter, and because she collected bumblebee things when she was a baby. she didn't. I did on her behalf because I love yellow. And the bumblebee honestly represents her well. Even now, it's very pretty, but it will sting you for its own, even though it will result in its own death. I love you, Cheyenne. I think she would embrace that. That's the case. She will to the death, literally, for revenge if necessary. And so, but she has the biggest heart. She just won't let anybody else know. Anyhow, when I got the whole thing done, and I'm going back to the doctor, like I said, to have the fluid removed repeatedly, my sweet Dr. Krishnamurthy, he said, okay, so in all seriousness, do you have a tattoo in mind to integrate with the scar? Because I got to be honest, I'm really curious what that would look like. And I hadn't totally given it a lot of thought. Tattooing over scar tissue is supposed to be pretty uncomfortable. I mean, not that tattoos tickle per se, but it's supposed to be pretty uncomfortable. That's not a deterrent per se, but I didn't have any good idea in mind. He starts throwing out ideas. It was the funniest thing because I am confident this man does not have tattoos. And in general, societal standing within his family and his religious beliefs, he's not getting a tattoo. However, he was enthralled at the prospect that I might get a tattoo to integrate this with this scar. And so he, railroad ties, or could you do a trail of some sort? Ooh, butterflies. He was throwing out all sorts of things. Now, I never did get a tattoo over that space to integrate it because, like I said, I kind of enjoy that there's this massive tattoo, or massive scar across my shoulder. I mean, it's really like, it's a solid, 4 inches, and it's a decent amount of thickness because of the stretching and the bowing. And so it was really cute. He was so, please, I don't care how many years have passed, look me up, find me. I want to see the tattoo. I thought that was pretty wonderful. But, tattoos are really kind of just scars you choose, in my opinion. Everybody has a different opinion on that. And mine have all been Ebenezer's, a moment that's kind of like marked in time, things that I'm moving past and beyond, and a life I'm moving forward into. That's my story. Everybody has a different reason for getting tattoos, but those are mine. They're all Ebenezer's. And so, all this to say, I think it's fun to have the fantastical story, and it reminds me of the things and the ridiculous stories I was coming up with when I was a kid. I wasn't really telling the stories for the sake of just outright lying. It was like an experiment. Let's see who will believe me on this stuff. So, one story I remember really fondly, or a couple. When I lived in Knoxville, Tennessee, when I was in 7th grade, we moved back in the middle of 7th grade and lived there through the end of 8th grade, and then moved back to San Diego. When I lived there, it happened to coincide with Knoxville's bicentennial. I think it was their bicentennial. In any event, Knoxville was founded the same day I was born, October 3rd. And so here my birthday is coming up, but there is this spectacular celebration that's planned for all of Knoxville because of their anniversary bicentennial celebration. And so I remember telling some of my friends, well, I know it's Knoxville's bicentennial or whatever, but my dad has some connections, so some of this is actually for me. That's so ridiculous, okay? Like, honestly, there were like days off of work and school and parades and fireworks. And I heartily, because my delivery was so convincing apparently, or I don't know, I had this trustworthy dynamic about me. It was misguided. I convinced some of my friends that it was for me. I mean, actually convinced. And they were telling other people, this was actually part of this is Rhiannon's birthday celebration because her dad's got connections or something. And I guess the thing is, in Knoxville, it is possible that you would know somebody who you could have made that happen with. I mean, at the time in the 80s, it was a little bit smaller a town than it is now. I guess it was the 90s by then. It was the 90s. But in any event, I had heartily convinced a handful of my friends, who I apparently just really did not know better, that that was entirely improbable, and this was definitely a city event and had nothing to do with me, my birthday, or any connections. I should have been satisfied enough that I was getting fireworks on my birthday, because October 3rd is not, in fact, a fireworks day in any other place in the United States. I mean, possibly there is. But, my friends who have birthdays on July 4th, they're like, this is old hat. Fireworks on your birthday? No big deal. But for me, it was a huge deal. And when I was turning, so at the time I was turning 13, it was like the bee's knees that here I was getting fireworks for my birthday. And then there was another one, RC Cola was pretty popular back in the day. And my initials are RC, were Rhiannon Chadwick, and my dad was Richard Chadwick. So RC stands for Royal Crown Cola, right? I convinced people that it was a family business that I would take over one day. Oh my gosh. Seriously, this was the thing that I told people. It's embarrassing, really. But, I think it's kind of fun to reminisce on your stupidity. But there was something about, we moved around a lot when I was a kid. So you could just kind of reinvent yourself into whatever you wanted. And nobody knew the context or difference. I didn't know my family well enough to know that that was all shenanigans. My dad was an architect and he had nothing to do with any of this. So, who's going to fact check me? And this was pre-internet, right? Nowadays, I would have been on absolute blast across social media. This chick's crazy. Do you hear the stories she's made up? And I never made up the stories for the sake of really trying to convince somebody, as in, I needed you to believe it. It was just like a test. Could I convince you? Could my delivery be compelling enough? Was it close enough to the truth that someone would question, is it possible? Maybe it is. I don't know. Anyways, those were my fun times. So, my friend showing his spectacular fail on his mountain bike reminded me of this, and I just thought I would come on this long overdue. 2 friends have reached out to me recently and said, honestly, where are you at? I miss your stories. So I thought, well, let me get on with it and share something. And so I hope you enjoyed these stories. Kind of silly, honestly, a bit embarrassing, but I am who I am, was who I was. So I hope you enjoyed. Come back again and I'll tell you another story. Thanks.